3 years ago, my brother and I saved the super rich man in Beijing, who had a sudden heart attack and fell on the roadside. The rich man betrothed his daughter to us in order to repay the favor, and we brothers joined the Su family together. But last month, after their sister Bai Yueguang returned to China, the family began to quarrel. Despite their father-in-law's dissuasion, they insisted to go out to play with Bai Yueguang. They were so angry that their father-in-law had a heart attack and had a car accident. The doctor said that only the Su sisters, known as the Golden Holy Hand, could do the operation. I called my wife in a hurry, but it was my wife Bai Yueguang who answered. Qianqian is busy. If you have anything, just say it directly. I said anxiously. My father-in-law had a relapsed heart attack and had a car accident. Let her rush back to the hospital immediately for rescue. The younger brother also hurriedly called his wife, but she was hung up directly. After a moment of silence over there, the voices of the two sisters of the Su family came. In order to let us go home, you can even make up such lies. We are determined not to go back. Later, my father-in-law died innocently and could never wake up again. 1. Mr. Su's situation is very critical. This kind of difficult operation can only be done by the Golden Saint Su's sisters. The doctor was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. What's wrong with you two brothers? Why haven't you called your wives back yet? And it keeps coming from the mobile phone. The phone you made can't be connected for the time being. My brother and I's hearts sank to the bottom. We don't know how to answer the doctor's question. Does it mean that our wife was so angry with her father that her heart disease relapsed for the sake of the white moonlight? Or do they completely disregard their father's life or death in order to play with Bai Yueguang? We looked at each other and could only try our best to comfort the doctor. Please try your best to stabilize your father-in-law's situation, and we will find him back as soon as possible. After saying that, my brother and I rushed straight to the parking lot. But after we really got on the bus, we looked at each other. After all, we didn't even know their whereabouts. Fortunately, at this time, my wife posted a circle of friends, and the location turned out to be her own high-end hotel. The three of them took a group photo on a big bed with the text, "From childhood to adult, we still haven't changed." My brother and I were so angry that our hearts hurt, but we had to suppress our anger and rush away quickly. When we arrived at the hotel, after we reported our identities, the girl at the front desk looked at us strangely before saying the room numbers of the two sisters. How can we not understand the eyes of the little girl at the front desk? After all, this green hat is so brightly worn on our heads. We rushed to the room with a pale face and knocked on the door crazily. It was my wife Su Qianqian who opened the door. She looked at me and suddenly looked calm. "How you stalker. Are you shameless? I said we wouldn't go back. Get out of here." After saying that, she actually wanted to close the door directly. My brother and I pushed her quickly and walked straight in. Fu Yishuan was leaning comfortably on the bed, and his sister-in-law Su Wanwan half-squatted and gave him medicine to his leg. The younger brother was furious and pulled Su Wanwan over. "What are you doing? Dad's heart relapsed and had a car accident. Just waiting for you to save him." But Su Wanwan directly shook off his hand and looked disdainful. "Didn't you see that a Xian's leg was injured? You don't care about him when you enter the door, and you still want to threaten me with my father to go back. You're really crazy." Before we could speak, Fu Yishuan sighed. "It's not my fault. Climbing a mountain will hurt my leg, and they also stayed to take care of me. You cannot like me, but there is really no need to use Qianqian's father to coerce them. They don't like to be threatened the most. Damn, I've seen a lot of female green tea, and it's really the first time I've seen male green tea." I was so angry that I rushed up and grabbed Fu Yishuan's collar and roared angrily. "Shut up. This is a matter of life. Can you stop provoking the separation?" The two sisters immediately screamed. "What are you doing? Let go of Yishuan." Su Qianqian rushed up directly and slapped me hard in the face. She scolded loudly. "How you are you crazy enough? Who allowed you to do this to Yishuan? You are a big man, thinking about fighting with a Xian and being jealous all day long. I have said it many times that we are nothing. We have a deep friendship since childhood." Su Wanwan also agreed. "Sister is right. I think you two brothers are too idle. If there is something wrong with us in Yishuan, it's your turn to marry." His younger brother, Haoran, was so angry that his face turned pale that he was about to rush up to argue. I stopped my brother and thought that my father-in-law was still waiting for them to save their lives in the hospital. I could only suppress the grievances in my heart and said urgently again, "Qianqian, we really didn't lie to you. Dad's situation is very serious. If you don't go back, you won't be able to catch up." When my brother saw me like this, he also let go of his anger and sincerely pleaded with Su Wanwan. "Wanwan, what my brother said is true. Dad is indeed lying on the operating table now, waiting for you to go back to save your life. You can go back as you like." The sisters looked at each other. Seeing that we were so sincere, a trace of loosening flashed in their eyes. 2. Seeing this, Fu Yishuan immediately sighed. "Now that you have become other people's wives, our friendship can't be maintained. It is reasonable for you to go back with them." Oh, if I had known that I was so unpopular, why did I come back? I'd better just die alone abroad. The two sisters of the Su family immediately softened their hearts again. Su Qianqian looked at me coldly. Xiao Haoyu, I won't believe your nonsense. You are a liar, get out of here. A chill rose in my heart. After 2 years of marriage, I thought I was a good man. I have never lied to her and did anything wrong to her. Now how can I become a man who lies in her mouth? I couldn't hide the sadness and anger in my heart. Qianqian, I have never lied to you since I got married. How can you believe me? My younger brother came over and stood beside me, asking, Sister-in-law, since we met, you have asked my brother to go east. My brother never dared to go west, and he has never lied to you. How can you say that about him? But as soon as he stopped his words, he was slapped hard by Su Wanwan. Xiao Haoran, you don't have anything to say here. Why do you question my sister? You are just the sons-in-law of my Su family. Now the younger brother couldn't calm down. He looked at her wife indisbelievably. Since they got married, they have a better relationship than me and Su Qianqian, but I didn't expect that they were still invincible in front of the white moonlight. Su Qianqian curled his lips and said, Oh, don't make a fuss. You can ask us to go back. You must apologize to a Xian. You grabbed his collar like this just now, which has hurt his heart. If he is willing to forgive you, we will consider going back with you. I'm almost so angry that I'm sad when my collar is pulled. Is he still a man? I really don't understand how many drugs the sisters have been poured into to like this kind of green tea scumbag. But when I think of my father-in-law's kindness to me, my heart can't help but hurt. He is now lying alone on the operating table, waiting for their sisters to go back to save their lives. Now that my wife is willing to let go, even if I am humiliated, I will take them back to save my father-in-law. I looked at Fu Yishuan and gritted my teeth and said, Well, I apologize to you. I'm sorry. I shouldn't pull your collar, okay? Fu Yishuan smiled proudly. It's not that I asked you to apologize. If you don't want to, forget it. You are really insincere. Su Qianqian glanced at me. Since you don't want to apologize, get out of here. I clenched my fist and knelt down to Fu Yishuan. I'm sorry. At this moment, I don't care about my dignity as a man. I just want my wife to go back with me to save my father-in-law. When my brother saw that I was humiliated, his eyes were red with anger. My brother has knelt down and apologized. Can you go back? Su Wanwan whispered in Su Qianqian's ear. Sister, do we really want to go back? Su Qianqian winced at her, and Su Wanwan immediately understood. She came over and helped me up. Brother, what are you doing? We don't mean that. You misunderstood. I couldn't help sneering. If I didn't mean that, I wouldn't have been asked to get out. But I couldn't annoy them anymore, so I had to look at my wife and ask humbly, Can you go back with us now? Su Qianqian didn't say a word and walked straight out, followed by Su Wanwan. I thought they finally figured it out and called my brother to walk out the door together. But when we walked out of the door, they quickly turned back and closed the door. My brother and I were dumbfounded and rushed up to stop, but it was too late. I slapped the door crazily. Open the door. How can you deceive people? Dad's situation is really dangerous. He is waiting for you. Our eyes were red in a hurry, but the cynicism of their sisters came from the door. We've had enough of you two brothers. This kind of excuse can be made up. We won't be fooled. Get out of here. We still have to give a Xian's feet medicine, and we have to take care of him these days. Don't bother us. I was so angry that my chest hurt and cursed. Su Qianqian, you come out. You are really heartless. How can I lie to you about my father? Just then my brother's mobile phone rang. It was from the hospital. Mr. Xiao, come back quickly. Mr. Su is going to see you for the last time. 3. After receiving the notice from the hospital, my brother and I changed our faces. I slapped the door fiercely and my voice became panicked. Come out quickly. Dad can't do it. Please come out quickly. The younger brother was so anxious that he kicked the door directly with his foot. Su Wanwan, we really didn't lie to you. Come back with us to see Dad for the last time. But no matter what we do or say, the people inside are not moved at all. They even played the music louder. We were in a hurry outside, but they sang and danced with the white moonlight inside. When the doctor called again, we didn't dare to delay any longer, so we had to rush to the hospital. The doctor said that he had given his father-in-law a strong heart injection, so let's say something quickly. As soon as he entered the ward, his father-in-law opened his eyes with difficulty. He saw that there was no one behind us, and he couldn't hide his disappointment in his eyes. Yes, I am seriously ill, and my two most beloved daughters refuse to come back. How can he not be sad? My brother and I knelt beside my father-in-law's bed. Our hearts were full of sourness and we choked up. Dad, I'm sorry we couldn't bring their sisters back. The father-in-law tried to pull the corners of his mouth, and his eyes turned red. No, I don't blame you, I spoil them. In the past 3 years with you by my side, I have truly enjoyed the joy of heaven and earth. You are really good to me. It's Dad's fault. I shouldn't have let you marry their sisters. When I leave, you can leave if you want, but you are still my sons. My tears flowed down unconsciously. My mother-in-law left early, and my father-in-law dragged their sisters to grow up alone. From childhood to adulthood, I have been spoiled by them in every way. Even if I want the stars in the sky, I will try my best to satisfy them. They are worried that they will be bullied by their truer, and they will never marry for the rest of their lives. But such a love for a girl in exchange for today's ending. I not only feel sorry for my father-in-law, but also inevitably have a hatred for the Su sisters. My brother and I are orphans. Since I accidentally saved my father-in-law, he not only gave us a home, but also made us feel the warm fatherly love. But such a good person still has a chance to live longer, but he was buried by them for nothing. My brother and I choked up with tears in our eyes and said, "Dad, it's not your fault." Seeing his father-in-law wave his hand, Uncle Lin, the housekeeper, brought in a bunch of people. Under their notarization, my father-in-law left us all the 10 billion assets in his name. He even specifically stated that even if we divorce the Su sisters, we still have the full right of inheritance. And the Su sisters only have one house. After explaining everything, my father-in-law's face was pale, and my brother and I were not happy. On the contrary, I feel that my heart is twisted. We held my father-in-law's hand and watched him slowly close his eyes. My brother and I howled in pain. Father-in-law. Uncle Lin, the housekeeper who has been with his father-in-law for more than 30 years, was also in tears. He said in a low voice, "The master has gone. Please ask the two young masters to preside over the affairs for the master." I choked up and said, "Then I'll find a way to inform Qianqian and them to come back." Uncle Lin shook his head and said, "No need to notify. The master said that he didn't want to see them again, and he wouldn't let them come to worship in the future." My brother and I endured the pain to deal with my father-in-law's affairs. In the past 2 days, the two sisters of the Su family didn't even make a phone call, let alone disappeared. Since Fu Yishuan came back, they have been focusing all on him. They neglected their fathers, their husbands, and their families. I really don't understand why blood and family affection are not as important as the so-called white moonlight. When he was young, did Fu Yishuan raise the two sisters richly and teach them to become talented? How can they be so cruel? After the funeral, I went home holding my father-in-law's urn, only feeling physically and mentally exhausted. I lay on the sofa, looked at my brother, and finally said that sentence. "Brother, I want to get a divorce." The younger brother's eyes were also full of fatigue. "Brother, you leave me. I don't want to see them again." Our two brothers and sisters of the Su family, because my father-in-law walked together, I thought we finally had a happy family. But now my father-in-law is gone, this family is no longer home, and our fate with them is also separated. The next day, as soon as we got the divorce agreement, the voice of the Su sisters came from outside the door. "Yishuan, slow down." The two sisters helped Fu Yishuan and walked in carefully. Su Qianqian gave me a blank look. "You don't have long eyes? Why don't you pour water for Yishuan quickly?" I sneered repeatedly. "Are you finally willing to come back?" But just in time. Bookmark this divorce agreement. Su Qianqian immediately burned with anger. "Xiao Haoyu, do you still want to mess with me? You call Dad out to comment." The younger brother came from behind me with his father-in-law's ashes in his arms, with a resentful face. "Dad is here. Just say whatever you want." The two sisters' faces changed, and their eyes were full of panic. "What are you talking about? How is it possible?" For, looking at the disbelief in their eyes, I couldn't help but be angry. If it weren't for them, how could my father-in-law die? I said sadly and angrily, "How can it be impossible? If you don't believe it, you can go find your father by yourself." Su Qianqian immediately rushed to his father-in-law's study, but the study was empty and no one was there at all. Su Wanwan shouted loudly, "Dad, I'm Wanwan. I'm home. Come out quickly." But in the whole house, only her voice echoed, and her father could never come back. Su Qianqian shook her head desperately. "No, it's impossible. Dad must have hidden on purpose and acted with you." Fu Yishuan also interjected at this time. "Yes, it must be so. Mr. Su has always been healthy. How could an accident happen?" "Qianqian, don't listen to their nonsense. They lied to you on purpose because they were unhappy in the past 2 days." When Su Qianqian heard his words, she seemed to have found the main backbone and nodded quickly. "Yes, that's it. You must be lying to me." Su Wanwan was even more grumpy. "Yes, you two are really acting now." Unexpectedly, even the props of the urn are ready. I was so angry with them that my face turned pale. "You two idiots. I still believe the words of this green tea man. Do you have any brains or not?" My brother was also so angry that his eyes were red. "Su Wanwan, I also want to divorce you. How can you live up to your father's kindness to you over the years?" Su Wanwan was so angry that she rushed up suddenly, snatched the urn in my brother's hand and fell to the ground. He also said crazily, "I'll let you act. I'll let you act." The urn hit the ground and was immediately torn apart. The gray-white ashes were scattered all over the ground and floated in the air. My brother and I were red-eyed and fell directly to the ground and carefully swept the ashes on the ground together. Su Qianqian frowned and stepped on my hand. How long are you two going to pretend? Hurry up and call my father out. Don't waste time for me anymore, or I will really divorce you, I said coldly. Move your feet away and don't step on Dad's ashes anymore. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Su Qianqian's face sank, and her feet were even harder. She even kicked the ashes we had just swept together with the other foot again. Looking at the ashes floating in the air again, I can no longer suppress the anger in my heart. I directly withdrew my hand, pushed her hard and scolded her loudly. Get out of here. Needless to say, I'm divorced this marriage. You two have no conscience. You don't deserve love at all. Su Qianqian was pushed and staggered by me. She was about to fall and was stopped and hugged by Fu Yishuan. Fu Yishuan hugged Su Qianqian and said with concern, Qianqian, didn't you say that he was very good to you? Is this how he treats you? I originally wanted to withdraw from your world and stop bothering you, but now how can you let me go abroad with peace of mind? Su Qianqian was moved. Ashwan, you still understand me? Then don't go abroad. I will persuade my father to let you enter Su's. Su Wanwan also said, Yes, Brother Xian. Don't go abroad. Just stay in the Su family and live with us. As for their two brothers, I will ask my father to kick them out. The two orphans let them live a good life for 3 years, which is also cheap for them. After the death of my father-in-law, my brother and I inherited 10 billion family property 39,103. My brother was so much angry and immediately, You are really shameless. Do you still have to live a 3-person life? It's really crowded. I stood up after cleaning up the ashes on the ground and couldn't help sneering. Maybe they will enjoy it. Su Qianqian couldn't be angry and wanted to step forward and slap me, which was held by me. I don't want to put up with it anymore. In the past, for the sake of my father-in-law, for his sake, I could tolerate all her little waywardness. But now my father-in-law is gone and killed by them. What else can I put up with? When I thought of my father-in-law, my eyes turned red and I slapped her with my backhand. This slap, I hit you for Dad. Beat you, an unfilial girl, and kill him. Su Qianqian was stunned by my beating, and her eyes were full of disbelief. She couldn't believe that her husband, who didn't dare to talk to her in the past, dared to beat her. Fu Yishuan stood in front of Su Qianqian like a hero and scolded me angrily. Are you a man? Why do you still hit women? I stared at him fiercely. Well, if I don't hit women, then I will hit men. Before Fu Yishuan could react, I rushed up and hit him hard in the face. I have put up with you for a long time. You damn green tea man. If it weren't for you, my father-in-law wouldn't have died at all. When my brother saw me doing it, he immediately joined the battlefield. Our brothers beat Fu Yishuan and vented his hatred fiercely. But what my brother and I didn't expect was that the sisters of the Su family smashed a vase on our head. We fainted on the ground in pain. They waved their hands in panic, almost in unison. We don't want either. Who let you beat Ashwan? Fu Yishuan stood up with fierceness in his eyes. He came over and aimed at me in the stomach. Fight! Aren't you arrogant just now? Waste! I curled up in pain and couldn't help looking at Su Qianqian, but she dodged her eyes and didn't dare to look at me at all. The younger brother also looked at Su Wanwan bitterly, but she just gave him a blank look. Finally, Su Qianqian said, Remember to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. They pulled Fu Yishuan away in a hurry, and didn't care about our brother's life or death. When Uncle Lin came back, my brother and I had been bleeding all over the ground. 5. The next day, my brother and I dragged our seriously injured bodies to the Civil Affairs Bureau. What happened yesterday has completely chilled us. We don't want to be tied up with such a blind woman anymore. Su Qianqian and others showed up on time, and Fu Yishuan followed. Until this moment, he still had to pretend to be a good person, play with the sisters of the Su family, and pretended to make peace. Qianqian, how about you think about it again? I think their brothers were also impulsive. I was also bad last night. I shouldn't have fought with them. Su Qianqian was still a little hesitant to say something, but he was provoked, and his eyes were immediately firm. Ashwan, it's not your fault. They don't know what's good or bad, so they have to mess with us. Since they refuse to repent, don't blame us. I couldn't help mocking. Su Qianqian, why didn't I find out that you were so stupid before? You were convinced by a few words casually provoked. People who are single-minded for you, but you don't believe a word. I hope you won't regret it in the future. My brother also looked at Su Wanwan disappointedly. Su Wanwan, you are also disappointed. I only thought you were frank and cute. I didn't expect you to be stupid and brainless. This green tea man approached you unkindly, so Dad has been dissuading you all the time. But you not only don't listen, but also want to lure the wolf into the room. You are really blind. Su Wanwan looked disdainful. Don't talk about my father. When we get divorced, my father will naturally appear. I don't believe it. My father will want you, not us sisters. After all, we are the biological ones. I didn't bother to talk nonsense with them anymore, so I pulled my brother directly into the Civil Affairs Bureau. There was no objection between the two sides, and the procedures were completed quickly. Out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Uncle Lin was already waiting for us. Su Qianqian rushed up immediately and said arrogantly, "Uncle Lin, where did my father go? Hurry up and let him come back. We are divorced from the two brothers of the Xiao family." Su Wanwan also stepped forward and said, "Yes, let Dad come back quickly. There is no need to act with them. We are already divorced." Uncle Lin looked at them coldly, and his tone was full of annoyance. "Do you still have the face to mention the master? The master is already angry with you. He said that you don't deserve to be his daughters. From now on, you are no longer the Su family. You can go wherever you like, and everything in the Su family has nothing to do with you." The sisters of the Su family stared at the boss and exclaimed, "No, it's impossible." Uncle Lin's eyes were full of disappointment. The master has been dead for 3 days, but the sisters still don't seem to know anything. He didn't understand why the master who dominated the business field had 2 such dull daughters. Uncle Lin blushed with anger. "It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. Everything is irreparable. Hao Yuharan, let's go." But the 2 sisters pulled Uncle Lin to prevent him from leaving, and Su Qianqian frowned. "Uncle Lin, you have also watched us grow up since you were a child. How can you lie to me with the 2 brothers of the Xiao family? Have you received their benefits?" Fu Yishuan also came to add to the mess. "That's it. Qianqian trusts you so much. How can you deceive them with these 2 lies?" Uncle Lin looked at Fu Yishuan coldly and scolded angrily. Shut up. If you hadn't come back, my master wouldn't have died. The master has known your purpose for a long time. When you come back, you want to break up the young lady and the Xiao brothers, so that you can take the opportunity to annex the Su family. I want to eat our Su family. No so. The master has made a will and left all the assets to the Xiao brothers. The sisters only have 1 house. With that, Uncle Lin also took out the will made by his father-in-law before his death and threw it in front of the Su sisters. 6. Su Qianqian picked up the will with trembling hands and saw the contents clearly. Her face turned pale in an instant. When Su Wanwan saw her sister's expression, her face also became panicked. "Sister, is Dad really?" Su Qianqian nodded sluggishly. "It's true. This is Dad's autograph and notarized seal." She was so weak that she almost collapsed on the ground. Fu Yishuan held her up. He took the will in her hand, his face turned gloomy, and he immediately took it to his heart. He pretended to be hurt and said, "Qianqian, you have to cheer up. Think about it, how could your father leave all the assets to those 2 brothers? You are his biological daughters, so it's very likely to be a trap. They hurt your father and want to take away your family's assets." Su Wanwan also nodded repeatedly. "That's right, we are Dad's biological daughters. How could he make such a will? How could he leave the 10 billion family property to 2 outsiders instead of us sisters? There must be something fishy in this." My brother was so angry that his teeth were itchy. Su Wanwan, shut up. You think everyone is as shameless as Fu Yishuan. Su Qianqian wiped his tears and looked at us with hatred, obviously believing Fu Yishuan's words. Uncle Lin and I looked pale. Unexpectedly, even if she knew that her father had passed away, she still didn't regret it. Fu Yishuan just casually provoked a few words, but she actually believed it again. Su Qianqian clenched her fist and said angrily, "You guys are really too much. Unexpectedly, he killed my father for money. I will take you to court, and I won't let you live well." I looked at her coldly. "Su Qianqian, it was you who killed Dad. It's you 2 sisters. You still refused to repent." Su Qianqian shook her head desperately. "No, it was your brothers who deliberately fought for the family property that killed my father. I will definitely find the evidence." After saying that, she pulled Su Wanwan and left without looking back. Uncle Lin couldn't help crying. "It's an evil. It's a sin. What kind of ecstasy soup did they get from Fu Yishuan?" I put my arms around Uncle Lin's shoulder and comforted. "Let them go. Let them sue. When the truth is revealed, they will wake up." Su Qianqian acted very quickly and sued the court the next day. My father-in-law was the richest man in Beijing before his death, and this case naturally received a lot of attention. After all, the general public is most curious about the drama of rich families competing for family property. Therefore, Fu Yishuan used the power of the internet to constantly incite public opinion. It is said that our brothers are deliberate. They are not satisfied with marrying the sisters of the Su family. They also plan to kill their father-in-law and compete for 10 billion yuan of family property. My brother and I stood on the tip of the storm in an instant, and everyone shouted. Uncle Lin was so angry that he was bedridden when he saw them distort the facts like this. My brother was so angry that he wanted to find their theory, but I stopped him. I whispered, "It's not urgent." My father-in-law said that the best policy is to use static breaking, and wait until the enemy is most proud to give him a fatal blow. Every time I think of my father-in-law's teaching, I feel a twitch and pain in my heart. Such a good person, he still couldn't rest after his death, and his daughter made a hot topic. Anyway, I will reveal the truth to the world, and I want them to kneel down and confess to my father-in-law. Soon it will be the day of the court. We met Su Qianqian and Fu Yishuan outside the court. Fu Yishuan whispered in my ear. Xiao hao you. You will lose to me after all. Your wife is mine, and the Su family's 10 billion family property will also be mine. Ha ha ha. I strangled his neck in a cold voice. Fu Yishuan, they are just temporarily blinded by you. When the truth is revealed, you will wait for your judgment. He blushed when I pinched him. Seeing that he was about to be out of breath, I let go of my hand. He coughed violently and looked at me with hatred. The two sisters of the Su family came forward to help him up and scolded me harshly. Xiao Hao you are so excessive. I will never let you go. I sneered, don't talk nonsense. Go in and hear the real truth. I hope you can be as hard-mouthed as you are now. Su Wanwan still looked angry. Bah! The truth is that your brothers plotted to kill my father, and competed for our family's property. My brother smiled angrily. Su Wanwan, you are so poisoned. Or you don't have the courage to admit that you killed your father. So as soon as Fu Yishuan said, you immediately believe it and can't wait to blame me and my brother. A trace of lust flashed in the eyes of the two sisters of the Su family, but they soon regained their calm. Uncle Lin saw clearly from the side. He knew that my brother was right. At this moment the old man who had watched the Su sisters grow up since he was a child, couldn't help bursting into tears. He was completely cold. He felt unworthy for his master, and couldn't help sighing that the two sisters were really spoiled. Uncle Lin didn't say a word and pulled our brothers directly into the trial court. 7. In order to get the support of public opinion, Su Qianqian and others actually applied for online synchronous live broadcast. At the beginning of the court, Su Qianqian and Su Wanwan told their father's love for her with tears in their eyes, which moved everyone around her to tears. They firmly believe that their father, who loves them so much, cannot hand over the 10 billion family property to two outsiders. And those 2 days happened to be when their sisters were not at home. Therefore, they have reason to suspect that our two brothers plotted to kill their father just to take the family property. For a moment, the public opinion on the internet reached its peak. Everyone said that there was no need for trial, and the judge directly convicted me and my brother of conspiracy. Fu Yishuan sat under the stage and looked at us proudly, as if the Su family's 10 billion family property was in his pocket. But the law is fair and not just believe in it. When the judge asked the sisters of the Su family where they had been in those 2 days, they stammered that they had to go out with their friends. I sneered. Yes, you have been accompanying you in the white moonlight those 2 days, not even my father's life or death. As soon as this was said, the whole audience was in an uproar. Su Qianqian was anxious. This is the court, not the place where you talk nonsense. I ignored her and applied to the judge to present evidence and summon witnesses. We submitted the doctor's diagnosis report, proving that my father-in-law died of a recurrence of heart disease at that time. I looked at Su Qianqian and others with red eyes. You are determined to accompany Fu Yishuan that day. Dad was so angry that his heart disease relapsed. Originally, as long as my brother and I sent my father to the hospital in time, we could stabilize our condition. However, we were hit by a car on the way. Speaking of this, I can't wait to strip Fu Yishuan alive. It's your good lover. Your white moonlight makes people bump into us. He just wants to kill his father so that you can inherit the family property. He will pinch you again. The two sisters of the Su family fell on the chair, their eyes full of panic, and muttered, How could it be like this? It's not like this. But I'm not going to give them another chance to deny it. I directly summoned witnesses from all walks of life, the police in charge of our car accident case, and the notary office staff called by my father-in-law that day. There are also maids and drivers who were bribed by Fu Yishuan. In fact, we just knew that the car accident was not an accident. It was planned by Fu Yishuan. He knew that my father-in-law had a heart disease, so he kept provoking the two sisters to resist and using them to stimulate his father-in-law. When the servant reported that his father-in-law's heart relapse was about to be sent to the hospital, he arranged for someone to wait on the way. When he saw our car, he crashed into it regardless. Whether my father-in-law died on the spot or his condition worsened, it was impossible to escape the disaster. So we went to save their sisters that day, and Fu Yishuan tried everything to keep them. He thought that as long as his father-in-law died, the 10 billion family property would belong to the Su sisters, and he could completely control them. But he didn't expect that his father-in-law would be discouraged and leave all the family property to our brothers. Every time the truth is revealed, the faces of the Su sisters turn paler. When the court ruled that they lost the case, they finally realized that they were wrong. But what's the use? My father-in-law will never come back. They rushed over like crazy and beat Fu Yishuan, and kept slapping him in the face. How much you used to love, how much you hate now. My brother and I looked at all this coldly, and we only felt happy. If it weren't for their ignorance, their father-in-law would not have died at all. 8. Fu Yishuan was fanned by the sisters of the Su family, and his face was covered with nail marks and bloodstains from his nails. He broke free from them and wanted to escape. But he was a deliberate murderer, and the police immediately arrested him, waiting for him with legal sanctions. The person who plotted to kill my father-in-law has been punished by the law, and the big stone in my brother's heart has finally fallen. We plan to take our father-in-law's ashes back to his hometown and let him go back to his roots. The sisters of the Su family chased us home and looked at our brothers with tears in their eyes. But our hearts have long been hurt by them, and we can never go back to the past. Su Qianqian took my hand and his eyes were full of confession. Oh, I knew I was wrong. I really didn't know it would be like this. I looked at her coldly. You only know what's the use of making mistakes now. Can you change Dad back? Do you know how disappointed he was at that time? Obviously, as long as one of you is willing to come back, you can save Dad. But you won't come back for Fuishuan, that bitch. The more I say, the more sad and angry I become. As long as I think of my father-in-law's innocent death, my eyes turn red with anger. Su Wanwan looked at my brother with tears in her eyes and choked up and said, Ran, why couldn't you persuade us anymore at that time? My brother herself has a violent temper. Hearing that she was still shirking responsibility, she immediately burned with anger. He came forward and slapped Su Wanwan in the face directly, and scolded angrily. Didn't we persuade us? My brother knelt down for you. Did you hear that? Su Wanwan didn't dare to say anything when she was beaten. She just sat on the ground and cried bitterly. Su Qianqian's face was so pale that there was no trace of blood. For the first time, she lowered her posture and begged me humbly. How my sister and I are both wrong. Dad is gone. Let's start over. We can still be happy together. Now that the truth is in front of them, they want to start over? I have completely seen their selfishness and hypocrisy. I sneered. I'm not rare. Dad said that he didn't want to see you again. I don't need you to worship in the future. I will leave with my father's ashes. This house is the last thing Dad left to you. You can continue to live in it, and we will use the other assets for public welfare. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other, and we will never see each other again in this life. After saying that, my brother and I walked out holding my father-in-law's ashes. The sisters of the Su family have been chasing behind them, but they were stopped by the bodyguards called by Uncle Lin. They fell to the ground and cried, Ahau, don't leave me. I really know it's wrong. Aran, you said you would love me forever. How can you ren our word? But my brother and I looked firm and never looked back. Our brother took Uncle Lin back to his father-in-law's hometown. We have fulfilled one of our father-in-law's wishes for Uncle Lin. He also set up a welfare fund association with his father-in-law's assets to help poor children in mountainous areas and orphans in welfare homes. We want to spread our father-in-law's great love in every corner of the world and accumulate merit for our father-in-law. When I heard the news of their two sisters again, I was sad and surprised. They don't know whether they can't stand the online violence, or can't escape the condemnation of conscience after all. On the day of their father-in-law's death, the sisters both committed suicide, saying that they were going to atone for their sins. My brother and I were silent for a long time. If I had known today, why did I have to do it at the beginning? From then on, all the love and hatred about the Su sisters dissipated in time and faded in our memory. Only everything our father-in-law taught us will always be kept in mind. The full text is finished.